I deployed for a year and a half to 8 miles from Baghdad, where I ran the diagnostic infectious disease program. I had discovered mouthwash. I drank it and it set off that. And I even recall looking at the different trailers where they sold, strategizing how I would purchase mouthwash. How cunning, baffling, and powerful this disease is.
This is Hard Knocks Talks.
Gerry, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yes, of course. And what an adventure it's been to get here. You reached out to me, I would say almost 6 months ago now, hey?
I think so. Maybe 7 or 8. Was it before Thanksgiving, I believe?
Well, American or Canadian, I don't know. But in any case, yeah, it's been a while. And I feel like I've almost gotten to know you. Like we're like buddies now, just for the how many times we've met and tried testing and it didn't work and this and that and the next thing. And it's like, yeah, we've had a few interactions. So I feel like I'm chatting with a friend today.
Well, there we go. I think it's great. Oh, it's wonderful. It's comfortable.
Yeah. So you are a staff scientist, you are a clinical biologist, you're an adopted father and grandfather, keynote speaker, you're a published author, very active in the recovery community in your town, which is incredible. Is there anything that you'd like to really say before we jump into your story today?
You know, I thought a little bit about this, and what comes to mind immediately is, it's never too late. You're never too old, and your life matters.
With all of these credentials and these life accomplishments, I got to admit it's kind of rare to have people who have had these experiences and have these letters behind their name, willing to come forward and talk about these things with a level of humility. So I'm really excited to jump into this and to walk through your story with you, man. So having said that,
Cool.
let's turn it over to you. I might jump in now and again, but where do you want to start, man? The floor is yours.
My upbringing was perfectly normal, middle class, no abuse. My parents are still together in their early 80s. During my junior high school years, I was introduced to alcohol. I loved everything about it. Even at that age, and into beginning of high school, it was something that I was obsessed with. Funny enough, even people of my age were concerned. I barely graduated high school because of it.
What'd your parents say?
Boy, even today, they didn't know. And I find that to be extremely surprising. I was the kid with the Harley shirt, the long hair, heavy metal, leather jacket. I not in the popular crowd. I was a guitar player. They were very supportive. That I just maybe they turned or they were in denial. They knew about the drinking. I just don't know. When I do ask them about it these days, they tell me they had no idea it was that bad. I was told by even my family I had no self-esteem.
Yeah.
I don't know where that came from. It's part of people's biology. I had absolutely no self-esteem. I was bullied from probably 8th, 9th grade, and it was a very traumatic thing because I couldn't share it with anyone. I knew it wouldn't do any good. When you're hiding from someone every single day, changing your routine, changing how you would go home. I mean, to a kid, that's kind of awkward and small at the time. It really influences. I mean, sort of like alcohol in high school, your life revolves around it. At that point in time, your life revolves around how in the world am I going to escape this terror?
How did that affect your relationships in high school, being bullied and turning to the alcohol? And why? Was it because you were wearing the heavy metal t-shirts and you looked like a punk or what?
The relationship part, it was probably a combination of all mostly because I was so focused on the alcohol part.
Mm.
I didn't care. That was my number one objective. Out of the blue, I decided that the armed services was probably going to be a very good idea. I remember going and contacting a Navy recruiter, and I joined up, surprised the heck out of my parents. Off to boot camp I went and was going to be a corpsman, which is a medic. Interestingly enough, I didn't drink a lot during that training after boot camp to be a corpsman, a medic, because it was, I do recall, one of the first times I'd ever succeeded at anything. And boy, it was like a natural high. I was able to qualify for extended schooling where I chose to be a surgical technologist. At which point I had to spend some time with the Marine Corps, where this is where I picked back up, if you will, as far as my drinking is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Followed by 6 months of training in Portsmouth, Virginia, which is on the Atlantic coast,
Mm-hmm.
for surgical tech training, where again continued my alcoholic behavior. I was even pulled aside once by the administration, if you will, that was responsible for alcohol rehabilitation, and someone reported me. I did not think this was a problem whatsoever. I enjoyed it so much, and I think most importantly, it was not getting in the way of my success. It was not getting in the way of this good self-esteem that I had. It had not been a barrier yet. And also the culture in the military, you did have a lot of heavy drinkers. Yeah, and I was behaving like that on the weekends until I was deployed, Desert Shield, Desert Storm. In 1991, I spent 7 months in the Persian Gulf on a ship. Now, on a ship, I think we're the only Navy that does not have alcohol in their ships. But boy, when we had pulled into different ports like Dubai and Bahrain, it's game on.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was more interested. Oh boy, you can taste it because you have such a great you have such a great culture you might be exposed to. Everyone else is looking to go out there and experience it. I'm Where's the first place that I can get a drink?
Mm.
And that's exactly where I went to, stayed there the entire time until it was time to go ahead and shove off to get back underway. I just continued my drinking any chance I could get. And of
Mm.
course, drinking to oblivion.
Mm.
The next step for me was I actually went to college as a biology major, actually microbiology and chemistry minor. After 4 years in the Navy, after my experience in the Gulf, I actually got out. I'm a civilian again. My drinking is continuing. Now almost daily. The weekends are, of course, as deliberate and copious as can be. And I remember getting a 3.9 my first semester.
Mm.
And that actually continued for 4 years. I remember my senior year, I'm starting to hide bottles.
Mm.
This is where I've thought back. When did I cross that line where you're starting to hide bottles, where you're embarrassed to go to the same liquor stores? It's just escalating. And this is through my undergrad, where I think I'm preparing to go to med school. And my desires and my passions actually change. I'm deciding to go to get my doctorate in molecular genetics and biochemistry, which is what I end up doing, and do extremely well. Even though at this point, um, I'm I'm engaged to be married. My partner at the time, my fiance, who I met when I was a freshman in college, she did not drink. I can even recall the night before I defended my thesis. And she looks at me, she said, "Really? This could be one of the most important days of your life, and you're drinking." And it just the ego's so high, that ego begins to rise and
Mm.
rise and rise that you're invincible.
Mm-hmm.
Where those letters we talk about after our name and those positions, that status starts to protect you a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I still have no negative consequences. I'm not drinking in the mornings, but boy, do I have to drink when I get home because the typical shaking.
Oh, so
You're
you're
very.
experiencing like tremors and stuff now.
I'm experiencing tremors.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than a very traditional route as academics, as looking to do a postdoctoral fellowship and going for assistant professor, and that I decided that I loved the military so much, I entertained the idea of using my expertise in viral replication to go into the Army, knowing that I'd go in as a captain. And I actually ended up working at where they do biological warfare defense at Fort Detrick.
Was there
Mhm.
any fear around that, like working with these very dangerous viruses?
No, because I was very well trained. I really did not. I knew the ramifications of if there were any mistakes, if there were any mishaps.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still drinking, and of course, people are aware of that. I mean, you smell,
Mm-hmm.
your behavior. I never drank at work, but it was the same thing. You're alcohol dependent. You're hiding bottles around the house. You're a very heavy drinker.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing things that you wish you never had done. However, driving. A defining moment, it's very ironic. I do remember getting a phone call from another captain, and her husband, they just had a newborn. Her husband was, well, freaked out, was at the bar. She called, said, at Gerry, Brian's at the bar. I'm worried. Can you go check on him? I go to grab him, take him home. And on the way home, I remember this February 10th, 2006. I, let's say, probably fell asleep at the wheel, hit a telephone pole, knocked it over, knocked the electricity out in the entire neighborhood, my neighborhood, and of course was arrested, blew a .29. This is the only time I've ever been in trouble. And I know my career is absolutely over because as an Army officer, you can do just about anything, but a DUI, you're done. So I continue to drink. I'm oblivious to what I did. I don't think I even begin to address it. I am introduced to AA. I make friends. I have a sponsor who even continued to try and love me, even though I was continuing to drink, and it continued to get worse. I do believe the Army thought that they might be able to save me by I deployed for a year and a half to 8 miles from Baghdad, where I ran the diagnostic infectious disease program for a year and a half out there, which was a tremendous experience. I had discovered mouthwash,
Mm.
and I did not do that the entire time. However, I do recall even that I saw it on a movie. I decided to buy some mouthwash, and not knowing what it would do to me physiologically, I still took that chance. I drank it, and it set off
Wow.
that obsession again. Yeah,
That's
that's really, but that's something I hate to disclose. But whenever I tell my story, I think it's very important because I really do believe it speaks to the cunning, baffling, and powerful nature,
hmm.
and how that obsession can be turned on automatically. And I even recall looking at the different trailers where they sold and strategizing how I would purchase mouthwash. sort of like an alcoholic would do with
Mhm.
liquor stores. I found that to be a very good example of how cunning, baffling, and powerful this disease is.
Mhm.
So I get passed over for major twice. I know that when I come back, I have to get out. And I decided to apply to some prestigious institutes. And I was brought on for a 2-year clinical fellowship in clinical microbiology.
Mhm.
And we're looking at 2010 now. Now it's really become apparent that I have a major problem.
Mhm.
And I'm missing days of work. I'm able to complete my fellowship. I'm able to become board certified. My other life is still, it's no longer fun. This is no longer a good time. This is a necessity.
Mhm.
It works until it doesn't work. I heard something the other day where, uh, you know, it doesn't work for you. You begin to work for it.
Mhm.
And this is the point where I am. This is the point
Mhm.
where I am. I'm board certified. I passed my boards. I have a medical director's license. I have my first job as a medical director. That lasts 4 months. Because I don't show up to work. Of course, I'm sure I'm radiating alcohol. My drug of choice is the cheapest gallon of vodka I can find. I can afford Jack Daniels.
I was just gonna say, like,
I
what the
know.
heck, man?
As part of the disease, I know.
Wow.
I'm finding the cheapest ass vodka that I can find where I can afford. I look back going, why weren't you drinking the good stuff? You're making I laugh about it. I'm like, what the hell were you thinking? You're
Yeah.
fine. I mean, I am looking for the cheapest stuff I can find.
Mhm.
And yes, I get fired, at which point I spend 9 months unemployed, living off my savings, drinking from morning till night,
How much are you
daily
drinking?
drinking. I'm probably drinking, down south, we call it a handle.
Mhm.
What is that? 1.75 liters. And probably one will last me 2 days.
Mhm.
And I just continue this behavior until I can't anymore, meaning I have to go through withdrawals because I can't handle anything. I'm throwing up. The good old coffee grounds, I have no intention on stopping. I was fired from a medical director position of a clinical pathology microbiology lab.
Mhm.
I don't know if I want to say I didn't realize I had a problem, but I didn't acknowledge it. I continued to drink. The VA, because I'm a veteran, they're offering me rehab, and I tell them I'm too busy. Common story.
Mhm.
You think
Mhm.
as a medical professional, I understand the risks associated with that, but I don't. I just don't know at this point. And I've done it dozens of times with the throwing up for 2 days, not with the insomnia associated, with the leg constantly going. I can't remember what that is called. The sweats, the chills, just absolute disaster until you start to recover a little bit. And that's when I start drinking again. This went on for 9 months. Another hospital reaches out to me through a recruiter looking for another medical director for a microbiology lab, and they recruit me.
Mhm.
My drinking does not stop. I'm calling out sick all the time. Can you even imagine that? You have a position like this. They've hired you, and talk about opening up that box and seeing what you got. That has got to be devastating. Um, I did end up in the ICU finally. I had I'm actually working I can't think straight. I look like hell. I approach one of the nurses that I know and saying, "Can you hook me up to an IV?" She gets one look at me and says, "No, no, no, we're going to the ER."
Mm.
I'm at work.
Mm.
They get me in there. They take my labs. I have no platelets at all, which the liver is responsible for. And platelets are involved in clotting. That's why you find most alcoholics get bruised very easily.
Mm.
And two enzymes that are markers for liver damage are your ALT and ASTs. They're supposed to be in the teens. Mine are in about the 450 to 470 range. This freaks out people, of course, and they expect you to have hepatitis C. I disclose that no, I'm a heavy drinker.
Mm.
I end up in the ICU. This is the first time of many times I end up in the ICU. Um, I'm in the hospital for a good 5 days. I get out. I continue to work until you miss so many days and you are terminated.
Mm.
And that lasted 11 months, that job. At which point I continue to be unemployed again for 9 months. I'm exhausting my savings at the time. I could have gotten a part time job. That would have made a lot of sense, but no. I did go through a partial hospitalization program at this point through the VA. And that lasted 4 weeks, where you show up 5 times a week during the weekdays. You have urinalysis for drugs and alcohol. And I couldn't wait to drink. The day I got out of PHB, I was at the liquor store. I had no intention. And now we're at 2015. I'm recruited yet again
Mm.
to another institution. And that only lasted 4 months. Driving 4.5 hours home, coming through the door, sitting down, I'm told my eyes rolled into the back of my head and I started to seize. I had to be resuscitated, CPR, ambulance. This is my second ICU stay, hospital stay. I had to work odd jobs. I think I ended up in the ICU 2 more times, followed by yanked out of hotel rooms. I'm not ready to quit. I'm ending up in the ICU because I drink myself to such a point, like I'm in a hotel room, that the EMS has to show up. And I am so compromised that I remember one time they said they had to Narcan me because they had no idea what was wrong with me.
Mm.
I don't know what happened. All I know is I wake up in the ICU.
Mm.
I'm gotten to the point where I take one drink and there's no stopping me unless it's probably going to be death or it's EMS showing up.
Mm.
And that's it. And that resiliency, that steadfastness, which I think is fantastic. Get up, pull your boots up, drive on, Army officer stuff
Mm-hmm.
has been one of my biggest vulnerabilities. The ego. The
Mm.
ego. There was a psych ward visit for 5 days because that was my first psych ward stay. So I
Oh,
was
going down my first psych ward stay.
yeah. The first one was one of those recovery from a hotel room, and I guess I had disclosed that I was trying to drink myself to death. That
Mm.
usually will end you up in the psych ward. So I was taken to the VA, at which point I was directly admitted into the psych ward. They got me to a point where I was stabilized. and my BAC, blood alcohol content, had come down enough. And I went to the psych ward, and that stay was absolute chaos. It was like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. A old school from the 70s psych ward where people have no shoelaces and you go out into the day room and they do nothing with you and you just basically sit there and wait to eat until they can discharge you because you're no longer a danger to yourself.
What are you thinking?
And I can't wait to get the hell out of there so I can go drink. I serious as a heart attack. My family, of course, is disgusted because they know everything that's going on. They know everything. They're told about it. They call me at all of these times in the ICU. They never give up on me, though. Mm-hmm. It was Christmas of 2019. I repeat the behavior. The same thing, getting me alone. I don't really have a trigger. I look for something, and it gives me an opportunity. That one drink leads me to the ICU. I'm admitted for 5 days. It's so severe that I have something called rhabdomyolysis. My muscle cells are beginning to lyse.
What does that mean?
It's so severe. Okay, so when your muscle cells begin to explode to lyse, there's release of a lot of proteins. It's a very toxic environment. It can cause renal failure. I have to be stabilized. I finally reach out for help, Dan. It's almost like it was one of the moments of clarity. I'd had it. I'd finally had it. I was determined to reach out for help, to surrender, that I thought I would never drink again. I reached out to work. I reached out to the VA. I reached out to the recovery community, and I did discover the fellowship and how indispensable it was to me. For 2.5 years, I had the best 2.5 years of my life. I was tested randomly every single month for drugs and alcohol. It was a level of accountability that I love, that I still do today. This was a year and a half ago. I was out of state, and you get that criminal mind. I think I can have a drink. Just one. Boy, that bourbon in a hot tub. All I can recall is that led to 3 bottles of Jim Beam. Another one smashed on the bathroom floor of a bathroom in the hotel room, a box of wine and a case of beer. Back to the ICU. Back to a week in the psych ward. And for me, this was a defining moment. I finally got honest with myself. I finally was honest with the treatment faculty there, the treatment team, and we spent a lot of time talking. And I considered that more of a retreat because I really took that time seriously. And I had spoken about that resilience, that steadfastness that I thought was, let's say, macho, being such an asset that I can plow through this. Throughout the years, that has been my largest vulnerability. And we can call that ego. What really fed into that ego? Has it been the positions that I've held? Has it been those damn letters after my name? These things have absolutely killed me. And they were so eloquent in bringing that to my attention. September 28th of 2024. I have not had a single drink ever since.
All right, we're going to take a break and we'll get back at it. Saskatoon's own Heroic Microgreens understands the value of nutrition in mental health, recovery, and coming together in challenging times to ensure everyone has access to nutritious food. And as such, we'd like to thank A1 Accounting Group for their generous contribution to our monthly food bank donation. Would you like to pitch into our monthly donation pool? Shoot me a message through the email in the show notes below. All right, EHN Canada is Canada's leading provider of mental health and addiction services, providing evidence-based, medically assisted care with 1-year wraparound services for those suffering from substance use disorder. In Saskatchewan, their care is 100% supported by Saskatchewan Health. To learn more, find their link in the show notes below. Wellness News, Choice for Healthy Living, is a local resource that works to connect people to health and wellness-related products, services, and expert advice from industry professionals, locally allowing us to connect and engage. Check out wellnessnews.ca or skwellnesshub.ca today to learn more. If you'd like to see our content uncensored, we are now offering channel memberships. There is a lot of things we can't show you without getting restricted, so if you want the full conversation or to check out our merch, or if you want to show us some love and buy us a coffee, all of those links are in the show notes below. So let's talk about some recovery, man. Why don't you tell me about your first year in recovery? What did that look like for you? What did you learn?
Just had such a change in the way I approach things on a daily basis. Things that I have to keep in mind. Mostly placing boundaries that might seem embarrassing. I'm going to give you an example, okay, for me. I know that myself alone, left to my own devices, I can enter what I now call a world of self-destruction, because that's basically what it is. And I don't need to know the why. I just need to be able to address it. I didn't ask for this, but it's my responsibility to maintain order. So, my parents, I disclosed that they have been so supportive, and they never see me sober. So I went to visit them for a week, and what I had to do is, number one, I had to be dropped off at the airport because I want no opportunity for Gerry to deviate from his path, his journey to the airport. It had to be a direct flight. It had to be early in the morning. What I had planned to do is hand a note card to the flight attendant saying, please don't serve me anything, just go past me. I forgot to do that, but it was part of my plan. I had everything planned out. I would be picked up from the airport. I was hopefully going to go to a meeting or two, but I did some online. I was picked up at the airport. I had to put all of these boundaries in place, and it was levels of accountability. I was supposed to go to a wedding in a few days from now. However, something had happened. I was supposed to travel with my mother. I could have gone alone, but I canceled. And I told my cousin, because it's her daughter getting married, said, I am in recovery. Unless I have a chaperone, we'll come at another time. It's embarrassing. Okay. But these are actions that I have got to practice because I know my vulnerabilities. I know that I'm a little sociopath. Maybe if I'm alone, the gears will start turning. I see a psychologist every 2 weeks who specializes in recovery and relapse prevention. So, this is what my recovery looks like. I am extremely involved in the recovery community, whether it's speaking engagements, um, bringing meetings to different institutions, be it residential or otherwise. I had the opportunity to speak to an entire eighth grade class. These are the things that I have to do because the more I tell my story, the more I am able to acknowledge what I wasn't able to acknowledge before. And it hurts. You'd think that maybe it would have happened previously. They always say that it's wonderful in recovery because you get your emotions back.
It's
But
also
also
awful.
really sucks
Yeah.
because you get your emotions back.
That's the best and the worst
And
part.
it really is, but it really is a blessing. I'm very blessed because of the support. Now, do I have a support community? Oh yeah. I text people every single day religiously. And they text me because if they don't hear from me, something's wrong. I have not experienced that that cohesion, that unit cohesion, since I was deployed in Iraq.
It sounds to me like, you've recognized at this point, you've without a doubt recognized the unmanageability of your life, and there's
Yeah.
other spiritual principles that are not owned by any particular community, like these things of coming to believe in a higher power, or surrendering to a god, or surrendering
Hmm?
to source, the universe, whatever, taking inventory on your life, sharing these things with someone else. This is a pathway to healing. So I'm interested to understand more about what you've come to believe.
What really resonates with me is I've surface level, looked into the Buddha Dharma. Okay, Buddhism is always on a surface level really resonated with me. Uh, I believe in the group. That's something that, if you want to call it a higher power, something that's greater than myself. I miss being an officer in the Army because that was something that was greater than myself. Taking care of soldiers, being of service selflessly. And I find that that really fulfills a need that I have, that is a need in my recovery. So that right now encompasses the philosophy of a higher power for me. There's a lot of people like going to meetings that have a lot of long-term sobriety, and that's mostly the meeting. That's not me. I love going to the meetings with the people in the earliest sobriety where I can be that face that's smiling, that's very approachable, that they feel comfortable around. And I'm a big believer in this, that they see that face over and over again. So that provides them a level of comfort because that's what helped me. Their lives matter. And I sometimes it brings tears, and there are tears of joy because I love seeing that light go on. I love seeing that. We hear that a lot. And that's the miracle to me when they say, don't leave before the miracle happens. And there's a lot of compromise and it's worked extremely well. It's sometimes a bumpy road. However, sometimes this is where we are.
Yeah.
And it really is a journey.
Talk to me a little bit about amends, like on a daily basis. Like, certainly Gerry's not a perfect human being, and certainly he says things to his wife that piss her off and that he shouldn't have said or shouldn't have done. What does that look like? How do you make your day right when you don't do right?
I address in my mind, I say, I really want to address the world with patience, tolerance, and compassion.
Mm.
And those three things really mean so much. as far as how I approach people, how I approach circumstances. But here's the catch: how I approach myself too.
Mm.
Okay. And realize patience, tolerance, and compassion with oneself.
Mm.
What gives me a lot of patience is thinking about all of those who had a lot of patience with me, along with the tolerance. And boy, have people really had compassion. When I get angry, taking a step back, I've used this a lot in the past. The secret's in the refrain. Taking a step back, there's no need to respond immediately in action, be it words, be it behavior. A lot of these things define that patience, tolerance, and compassion. And it has been so beneficial for myself. And it's an ongoing process. I have conditioned myself for over 30 years under the influence. Who the hell is Gerry?
Mm.
I've tried on a few hats, and a few hats I have not liked. And I hear that's very common. That's part of the you get your emotions back. What community do I like being around? What profession is going to really suit me? Do I want to continue doing this? That's part of the patience, tolerance, and compassion. I tried some things and oh my gosh, I made direct amends to someone where I lost my temper. I have no idea where it came from. Someone from a different culture. I've never seen myself so ugly. A moment like that was extremely defining, going, okay, where the hell did that come from? We need to really investigate this. We need to dig deep. This is going to sound strange, Daniel, but it provides a lot of comfort to myself
Mm-hmm.
that developmentally, I have stunted that growth, those formative years. Those years of emotional development were stunted. They were
Mm-hmm.
compromised. Let's use that word. They were compromised. There's nothing you can do about that now, but however, the manner in which you react, you might want to think about that. There's a much more mature way of approaching issues. And it's been extremely comforting. It's part of the journey. It's part of my journey. I do want to read you something, and this is how I believe it all works, how it works. Okay.
Mm.
An addict fell in a hole and couldn't get out. So a businessman went by, and an addict calls out for help. The businessman threw him some money and told him to buy himself a ladder. But the addict could not buy a ladder in this hole he was in. A doctor walked by. The addict said, "Help, I can't get out." The doctor gave him some drugs and said, "Take this, it will relieve the pain." The addict said, "Thanks." But when the pills ran out, he was still in the hole. A well known psychiatrist rode by and he heard the addict's cry for help. He stopped and asked, "How did you get there? Where were you born there? Did your parents put you there? Tell me about yourself. It will alleviate your sense of loneliness." So the addict talked to him for about an hour. Then the psychiatrist had to leave, but he said he'd be back next week. The addict thanked him, but he was still in the hole. A
Mm.
priest came by. The addict called out for help. The priest gave him a Bible and said, "I'll say a prayer for you." He got down on his knees and prayed for the addict. Then he left. The addict was very grateful. He read the Bible, but he was still stuck in the hole. A recovering addict happened to be passing by. The addict cried out, "Hey, help me. I'm stuck in this hole." Right away, the recovering addict jumped down in the hole with them. The addict said, "What are you doing? Now we're both stuck here." But the recovering addict said, "Calm down. It's okay. I've been here before. I know how to get out."
Where can people find you?
They can go ahead and just email me and I assume my email address will be disclosed.
It will be in the show notes below.
Outstanding. Yes. And would hope to get back to those who just want to reach out for support.
Thanks so much for joining me today, Gerry. It's been a pleasure to walk through your story with you. And I suppose that's it for now, my friend. Take good care.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Say, this is Hard Knocks Talks.